Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here, and in this video, I'm gonna show you how I record drums that sound like this. In a dingy, bare bones garage like this. Let's dive into it. So welcome to Frightbox Goes Gorilla, where we record pro-level productions with basic utilitarian-style tools within unexpected environments, like this garage. So the question is, why am I doing this? Why am I recording drums in this garage? I mean, I could easily record drums in my basic project studio, or maybe I could rent out space within a professional studio for a day. Why am I choosing to record drums here? Well, reason number one is I am on a mission to prove to the world that you do not need expensive gear, and you don't even need a professional environment with acoustic treatment to record pro-level sources and instruments. That's reason number one. Number two is I actually prefer the sound of non-studio spaces, like this garage. Right now, my old band King Kelly has reformed and we are recording a new EP. And for two of the songs on that EP, I want a bombastic, huge, heavy rock drum sound. And again, I prefer a space like this over a pro-level studio. And you're gonna hear exactly why in this video. So let's talk about the room and gear that I'm using to accomplish this task. Okay, so let's first talk about the actual space itself. As you can see, this is a bare bones garage. It is actually my garage that's under the addition attached to my house. And as you can see, there is no acoustic treatment. This is not a studio by any means. Again, it's just a dingy old garage. And it's roughly 440 square feet. So that's the actual space. Let's talk a little bit about the gear itself. The drum set that we're using for this recording is just a basic Yamaha Birch Custom, nothing fancy. I've got some coated Evans heads on the toms as well as the snare. And before I jump into the microphones and the mic placement, let's talk about my little studio here, my makeshift studio. So the interface that I'm using is a Behringer XR18, which has 16 mic inputs. I'm a huge fan of this interface, and it is sitting on top of an overturned recycling bin. Doesn't get any more fancy than this. And my makeshift control center here is just my 2012 MacBook Pro running Pro Tools and some very small PreSonus Aries monitors. And these happen to be the Aries E3.5s. So let's talk about the microphones that I'm using on the drum set. Well, the first thing I want to mention is that I'm a fan of using snakes because it keeps the cabling nice and clean. I could use shorter cables. So I've got a 16-channel snake here for the close mics on the drums, as well as a 4-channel snake back here for the room mics, which I'll talk about in a second. Now for the mics themselves, I'm using nothing fancy. I'm using an Audix D6 on the kick, a 57, SM57 on the rack tom, SM57s on snare top and snare bottom, a Beyerdynamic M88, which is known as the Phil Collins microphone I'm using on the floor tom. I love the proximity effect of this microphone, and to me it sounds great on floor toms. Now for overheads, I don't think of overheads as overheads. I prefer to treat them as cymbal microphones, and I glue the sound of my kit together with the room mics. So I don't care what my snare sounds like in my overheads or the drums themselves, they are just cymbal microphones. And I'm using Shure SM81s for the main crashes. And my good friend Ben Karras, who is a great producer in his own right, has lended me his Octavia small diaphragm condensers, which I'm using on the ride and the hi-hat mic. And that's it for the close mics on the drums. But for me, the magic of this drum recording comes down to the room microphones and the room mic placement. So for this recording, I'm using 3 main room mics, a mono room up the center that's straight across from the drum set, and it is a large diaphragm condenser. And in this case, it's an AT4050. Hello, Bobby from the future here to let you know that I am a moron, and the microphone is actually an AT4033A. Goes to show you how little I care about gear, especially considering that I own this microphone and use it all the time. Now hang tight because very soon we will be diving into the drum tracks themselves. See you soon. And to add width to the drum sound, I have a Shure SM81 pointing at this corner of the garage, as well as an additional an additional SM81 pointing at this corner of the garage. Now you might be wondering, why am I facing the microphones away from the drum set and at the corners? Well, the reason is simple. I'm looking for more of a diffused sound. In other words, I want more of the reverb of the room in the stereo pair than the actual direct sound from the kit itself. And believe it or not, it actually works really well, especially when you're recording in a highly reflective environment like this garage, which is mainly constructed of cinder block. But wait, there's more. I've got a bonus pair of room mics, I guess you can call them distant room mics, buried, hidden away in my basement. So I have a pair of Audio-Technica PZMs, which unfortunately they don't make anymore. These are actually boundary microphones, so they're meant for conferences that I got used off of eBay for like 20 bucks each. So when I recorded drums, I'm going to keep this door closed, and it helps add extra diffusion to these room mics, which adds extra weight, size, and distance to the drum sound. So we're gonna end up with a huge drum sound that also sounds very natural because all of the reverb that you'll hear in the drum mix is natural. So with that being said, let's record some drums.
I'll try that. That's good? Yeah, I'll try that.
All right, cool. All right, man, rock out your
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so it has been a few days and I am extremely happy with the results. Now, I was going for a Steve Albini-esque drum sound, and my good friend Jake Rea, who is the drummer of this band, was going for a Bush 16 Stone type of drum sound. And I think we've accomplished what we've set out to do. And again, think about where we recorded. We recorded in a dingy garage with a moderately priced USB interface and a handful of microphones. A far cry from a professional recording environment. I wanted the drums to be big, bombastic, and natural sounding without having to use a bunch of reverb and drum samples. Now within my DAW, I have the drum tracks themselves, along with a few pre-production elements, just a pre-production bass track, a couple pre-production guitar tracks, a synth track, and a clean guitar. But again, these are all pre-production. They will be re-recorded for real once we finish recording the rest of the drum tracks for this EP. So what you've heard so far is just a roughly balanced drum sound with some pre-pro. That's it. Nothing is mixed, nothing is mastered, and I still have to record some guitars and vocals and bass. So with that being said, there are three key elements that are making this drum sound work and that allowed me to pull this off. The first one is the use of room microphones. People are brainwashed online to believe that you have to record drums in some immaculate environment. It's not true. As a matter of fact, whenever I record drums in a pro studio, they generally sound pretty stale and pretty boring. Again, like I said earlier in the video, I actually prefer to record drums in a non-studio environment because they're generally pretty reflective and it gives me a lot of control over the drum sound. Check this out. I'm gonna play the drums back and I'm going to intermittently bypass the room mics and just listen to how much they add. So as you can hear, muting those drum mics really dried up the drum sound, even though the drums are recorded in a highly reflective room. And that further proves that you don't have to record in some crazy fancy studio, even if you're going for a dry drum sound, which you will later add reverb to. That is something that is so overblown online that it's not funny. I get people telling me that they use Easy Drummer because they don't know how to record live drums, that they don't have the space. I've recorded drums in tiny rooms and I've recorded drums in huge rooms and I've achieved great results in both situations. It's your approach and your creativity that matters. The second thing that's making this drum sound work is the use of analog emulation. Now again, I tracked through the Behringer XR18, which is just a basic USB interface. So it's pretty sterile, pretty cold. What you put in is what you get out. It does nothing detrimental to the sound, but it also doesn't add anything to the sound, like 99.9% of modern USB interfaces. It doesn't matter what USB interface you use. So because of that, on each channel, I have some basic analog emulation. So I'm using analog emulation on all of the individual drum tracks. Now, it does not matter what you use. You could use a stock saturator, or you could use the slate stuff or the wave stuff or free stuff. I don't care. Just use some form of analog emulation, keep it subtle, and that'll really warm up your drum sound and make it sound more like a pro record. And the third thing that allowed me to record drums in this bootleg dingy garage is that I concentrated on the source. In particular, the drum set itself. I made sure everything was nice and in tune before I started, and also by recording a good drummer. If you record a crappy drummer, you're in trouble. Yes, you could layer in samples and you could do a bunch of other trickery, but it'll never be the same as recording an actual good drummer, especially one that's nice and consistent. And Jake Rea, who's the drummer of King Kelly, is one of the most consistent drummers I've ever recorded in my life. That's why I don't even need to use drum samples. Everything you're hearing is 100% natural drums. No drum samples at all. Now I might layer in a kick sample ever so slightly and maybe a snare sample in the final mix. I took samples of the actual drum set on drum tracking day, but to be honest with you, I really don't even need it. The drums sound hard hitting and super consistent at the source, which is the way it should be if you're looking for pro level results. Now I'm gonna add a fourth bonus tip here for you, and that is to be prepared when you record your music. Now, I am recording this production. It's my own project and my own band, so obviously it is not costing us anything. And even with that being said, we did thorough pre-production. So even though we're tracking live drums for this EP, everything was written with Easy Drummer, or at least sketched out with Easy Drummer so we can hear the song in a crystal clear manner before we record it or set up a single microphone. Thorough, in-depth pre-production goes a long way and will help solidify pro-level results that will make recording, editing, mixing, and mastering so much easier. Believe me. Now, on the topic of production itself, the issue with so many of us as home studio owners is that we have no idea on how to approach the process as a whole. And the large majority of us make the exact same mistakes over and over and over again, which yields amateurish results and a colossal waste of money on gear you don't really need. Believe me. I've been there. Now, I don't want this for you. I want you to skip over all of the mistakes that I have made. And because of this, I've put something together called my Polished Production Checklist that clearly outlines my process for producing pro level results, regardless of the gear and space I'm working in, all within a simple PDF guide. The Polished Production Checklist is absolutely free right now, and you can have direct access right now by clicking the link below in this video's description. Now, if you're interested in this type of content and would like to watch me produce an entire song from start to finish with budget-friendly gear, again, in non-studio spaces, just click the card above. It'll bring you to that video, and you'll get to witness the entire production process from start to finish. Check it out. Until next time, drink that Spindrift.